I've tried to figure out for a little bit here exactly how I want to go about discussing this issue, what exactly I want to discuss, and things of that nature. So I think a better way to explain this is just that America is broken. Hey everyone, my name's Christian, and I have a lot to say about many things. I want to talk about when I say that America is broken, and I would argue that much of the world in general is broken. I don't mean that it's not functioning as intended. I don't mean that there are, chinks in the armor. I don't mean anything like that. I mean it is morally broken, morally bankrupt, if you will. But contrary to what conservatives will often think and say, it has nothing to do with the LGBTQ community or feminism or anything of that nature. No, it is morally bankrupt because of this system, this capitalist system that we have in America and much of the Western world in general, was always built to do one thing above all else: enrich capitalist owners at the expense of everybody else. Now, a lot of times, what we do, America and other Western imperialist countries, what we do is we offset the grueling labor and downright slavery to other countries. Think the Chinese sweatshops. Think what we've done historically to Cuba and other places in Latin America throughout the 60s, but even now. There are many parallels that can be done between modern day America, America here in the 2020s, and Nazi Germany. And while many people have said that, people like myself who have understood and pointed out those parallels, they would say, oh, we're overreacting, oh, it's not that bad, oh, you just disagree with everybody. Everybody you disagree with, you call a Nazi. No, not everybody. I can only speak for myself, but even most people on the left seem to be that if we disagree with somebody, we don't necessarily call them a Nazi. But if they're exuding Nazi-like tendencies, yeah, we're going to call that out accordingly. And one of the dumbest versions of this that I've seen has been, we are only 1 month into 2026 here, and already we, as an American country, not the people, but our regime, our country, has attacked a sovereign country and kidnapped their leader. We are threatening to take over another country, possibly multiple other countries. We are turning our own police state, immigration force, what have you, against our own citizens. They've been attacking freedom of speech since last year at least. We still have morons trying to put forward things like, overturning Obergefell and making, or Obergefell, as it's pronounced, and trying to make gay marriage illegal once again. Many such, we have the COSA, Kids Online Safety Act, which is a pearl-clutching defense to just hamper down and cause more censorship. So many different things happening that are tearing at the fabric of what this country, not necessarily what it is, but at least what it's supposed to be, the ideal of America. We built this country This country was built on immigrants. Unfortunately, yes, it was often built on slave labor, but it was built on people coming here wanting a better life for themselves that they couldn't get in whatever country they came from. That's what actually made America great. That's why we had the Statue of Liberty, a symbol of that beautiful dream of America. And now, well, tell you what, immigration's down. Because who the fuck would want to come here right now? Genuinely. People think it's overblown to compare us to, again, Nazi Germany. You know, they think, oh, you guys are, you're being, it's the radical left. But when you see the parallels, if you're familiar with history, you know World War II started when Germany invaded Poland. I don't necessarily think there's going to be World War III. I think if there ever is a World War III, that's going to be the end of everything because we all have nukes. But we can't ignore the similarities between now posturing over invading Greenland, of all places, versus Nazis invading Poland. And what's funny is you might look at something like that and say, well, you know, I thought all the like immigration thing and all that stuff was, you know, about them being racist, which it is. Well, it doesn't make sense because a lot of Greenland people are white, believe they're primarily white. And that's true. But it does make sense when you think about the reality that the first people the Germans went after, the first people the Nazis went after, were the Polish, like the first other country. And the Polish, on average, largely are white, blonde hair, blue eyed, and sometimes they're pretty tall. They are like the ideal Aryan. And similar to the Nazis, we now have people, for all the horrific things that ICE has done to immigrants in the past, we now have many people, some who voted for this, some who just thought, well, I didn't vote for this, but you know, at least I'll be safe because we're white, myself included. Had a hope that, well, I can kind of, you know, fight against this, and I can leverage my my privilege as a in my case a cishet white man to fight for those who are being marginalized. And to an extent, it is true that people like myself should use our privilege to benefit disenfranchised people. But then ICE did the unthinkable. They killed a blonde white woman in broad daylight. And the funny thing is, the admin didn't even do the kind of thing that I and many of you would probably expect them to do at this point. They didn't play the whole, oh, this is so unbecoming, you know, this is not what our training entails, you know, clearly they need to be, you know, brought back, retrained. This is not indicative of you know, ICE or, you know, the regime or anything like that. This is one bad actor. No, instead, within an hour of her death, of her murder, Kristi Noem went out there and said, well, this was a domestic terrorist. What? Now, there are many people who have fallen so far into the MAGA cult that they believe this. They take this and they will just continue licking the boot. But there are many people, including liberals and MAGA people, that have seen things like this and have said, there's no defending this. This is horrific. Because someone like Renee Good could have been your neighbor, your friend, your aunt, your mother, your whatever, your coworker, whatever. Not to say that the Hispanic people that ICE has been going after couldn't also be those things, but it hits a little close to home when it's a average white person. This understandably caused many protests, leading to the murder of another person, this time a white man by the name of Alex Preddy. Now, both Renee and Alex have basically been like some of the best humans. Like there hasn't been anything bad on them that could have been dug up and made to look like, oh, they were these horrible radical people that deserve no. And then the funny thing is, in the case of like Alex Preddy, for example, they've been trying to say, well, he had a gun. Yeah, he had a concealed firearm, which is in line with the Second Amendment. Something that the right supposedly cares about. But clearly, they don't care about any of it. I mean, they've been wiping their ass with the Constitution since Trump's second term anyway. But like I said, it hits close to home. While these people are not the first, and unfortunately will not be the last, that have been murdered by ICE, we have people like Keith Porter, for example, and many others whose names are not nearly widely as known as Alex Preddy or Renee Good. But all of these people and many others deserve justice. Abolish ICE is now the moderate position. In my opinion, just like the Nazis, they need Nuremberg-style trials. And when they say, oh, we were just following orders, cool. That's what the Nazis said. So, for those that say, oh, well, these are false equivalencies, or, you're just comparing everything you don't like to Nazis, so on and so forth. No, I'm just drawing lines because I'm familiar with history. You might want to familiarize yourself with it as well. Let's go back to that part, though, about how open people like Noam have been about the murder of these people. Trying to say, oh, well, they're domestic terrorists. Basically, they deserve it, right? They deserve to be murdered in broad daylight by the secret police. One thing that's very interesting, it's funny, because when Trump came into office last year, he said, this would be the most transparent administration. And yeah, it's pretty transparent. Going back to the attack on Venezuela, of course you had, political operatives and such on the right, trying to say how, oh, we want to liberate them, we want to liberate them from their dictator and instill democracy and all that stuff. And then you had Trump come on and he's like, no, it's about oil. We're trying to get their oil. Yeah, we know. Just like when we meddled with Afghanistan and Iraq. The list goes on. And speaking of lists, for a good while, even the right was very hell-bent on the release of a little something called the Epstein Files. And yet, when it came time to put up or shut up, the DOJ had been ordered to release all of the files by the end of last year, December. Release all of them in a searchable format so that people like you and me could see what was going on. If we wanted to search something like Trump and see how often he appears in the files, we should be able to do that. And understandably, they wanted to protect the names of the victims in the files. And yet, they started getting released. And what did we see but black page after black page? I mean, technically they're white, right? But all of the text have been blacked out. Funnily enough, new files have been released because they keep putting out new files. Clearly, they're trying to censor more and more, and we know pretty much at this point. We haven't had it officially confirmed, but that the directive has essentially been try to hide Trump and his cronies within the list as much as you can. And yet, one of the most recent drops that just came out of like 3 million files included the name of a victim and then nothing else on that page. Just a black square. It is beyond parody how corrupt this admin is. But the reality is, it does not begin and end with Trump or the Republicans or MAGA or even the New America First, which is like not even Nazi adjacent, just actual Nazis. It doesn't begin with any of that. Doesn't end with any of that. The systems have been set up in place to benefit people like Epstein and his friends, including the likes of Trump, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and many other powerful people. I remember Musk wasn't really like a big name when I was growing up, but Bill Gates was. I remember being taught about how he was the richest man in the world and how he was really something to aspire to and all these different things. Well, turns out he and many of these people are just evil monsters. And when I say evil monsters, I mean evil monsters. At the time of recording, the most recent Epstein file drop included a section where it detailed, and trigger warning for anybody, for everything, really. There was a section in one of the files in which it described how one of the events that would be held at Epstein's parties was Donald Trump specifically would, and there's no way to say this without, like I said, insane trigger warning, measure and rank the tightness of these trafficked girls that were on the island at these parties. When I first heard about that, I was like, I'm good. I don't need to hear anymore. I don't. How much more evil can it be than something like that? Well, we have reason to believe now that, of course, many of these victims were killed. They were raped and killed. There's no bones about it. And we have reason to believe now as well that these guys might have even been partaking in cannibalism and such. Were these people just doing like every evil thing? I don't know about the cannibalism thing. I've only heard about that one. I haven't read anything in the files or anything specifically about that one. So that one's alleged, as far as I'm concerned. But I wouldn't put it past them. Given all of the horrific things, it's like you hear the most evil thing, and how can it get worse? And then you hear, oh well, they had ties to Israel and were very much a part of the genocide that has been going on for a long time now against the Palestinians, and oh, they had ties to this evil government organization that really, you know, infringed on the human rights of this other country, and so on and so forth, and then you find out like, oh, not Musk, Epstein was directly connected with Steve Bannon, who basically is responsible for the poll board on 4chan, which essentially created the whole culture war, and Bannon used that to get disaffected young men on board with the MAGA movement, which basically got us to where we are here today. And it goes on, and you just see it's all connected. It's horrific. It's like, what do you do with this information? What do you do? It seems so hopeless, so devoid of any light in all this darkness. But I would argue that's what they want. I would argue the reason the admin is being so brazen about the horrific things they're doing now, not even seeming to need to justify any of it, is because they think they are on. They think they're winning. They want us to be scared. They want us to shut up. When they literally canceled Jimmy Kimmel last year, it was meant to be a chilling effect. Don't speak out against the admin, or this could happen to you. And people like myself and many others were concerned that, oh shit, are they going to come for me? But that's what they want. We have certain freedoms in this country and rights that we can enforce and stand by. And it is imperative, now more than ever, to know your rights. Like how ICE or police or anyone else show up at your door without a warrant, a real signed warrant by the judge, they don't get to just enter your house for no reason. You don't have to let them in, for example. And that goes for your car as well. Any property that's yours. So if they want us to be so beaten down by all this, to just cave and let them walk all over us, what do we do? Well, there's a great saying: all it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. And the inverse of that would obviously be, all it takes for good to succeed is for good people to do something. And we are doing something. There were already massive protests over the killing of Renee Good, and since Alex Preddy, those protests have only ramped up. And we're getting results. Trump's approval rating is dropping at an insane rate. People are turning on MAGA in droves. That movement is pretty much done in general. I feel that the next thing that's going to replace it is going to be America First, which again, actual Nazis, not just parallels, but actual Nazis. What we are seeing now is that when we fight, when we do the right thing, and that can be in any capacity, we will win. Because we're on the side of human decency. We are on the side of peace and love and acceptance and human rights and progress and making life and the world better for everybody, ourselves included. There's so because of these protests and such, many ICE agents have been pulling out of Minneapolis. The director, Greg Bavino, was, I don't know if he was fired or forced to resign or what the deal was, but he's gone. Now, unfortunately, Tom Homan has taken his place, and Tom Homan is also a evil monster. Pretty much everyone in the Trump regime is. Not really surprised. Though Tom Homan did act under Obama as well, which is part of the important thing to know here. It is not just a Republican issue. Democrats have facilitated a lot of this as well. And many Democrats have voted to continue funding ICE. But there are people who are outspoken in Congress and otherwise that are standing up to this. There's this idea of slacktivism that people like to kind of mock and say, oh, if you're just like, tweeting or whatever, like you're not really doing anything, right? And don't get me wrong, it doesn't have nearly the same level of effect directly as something like protests and voting. Voting itself is extremely important. But I believe that this current admin, especially, and many of the powers that be, are aware, acutely so, as to how important our voices are and how important social media now is. That's why they've outright tried to censor and clamp down on TikTok, for example. They want you and me and everyone else to shut up and just let this happen. Fitting, considering those are the same things people often say to rape victims. We cannot, will not let them win. Even, it is incredibly important for you and me and all of us to do our part. Even if that's not going to a protest, even if that is just voting, because like I've never been to a protest personally. Even if all you do is work to convince your loved ones who maybe are MAGA or MAGA adjacent, whatever, you work to change their minds. Even if all you do is share something or post something on social media, even if all you do is share something or post something on social media, these actions change things. They move people's hearts and minds. If slacktivism didn't actually do anything, again, it's not all that you should do. But it is actually incredibly important for you to speak your mind on in any way that you can and work in any way that you can to fight for the things that you believe. And even if that fight is just at home, or amongst your coworkers or whatever it is, if you can work to reach people where they're at and change their minds, that's how real change happens. It's a big part of why I do what I do here. But you have to, now more than ever, speak up for what you believe. And I believe if we do, and we come together, we will defeat this rising fascism that we see in America and all over the world. As always, these are my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Follow me on social media for more. I I don't really post or anything much on Twitter. I post here and there. Normally, I'm retweeting and requoting things, quote tweeting things, but you'll see things that I like and agree with and such through that. If you're interested, um, uh, I have a podcast with a buddy of mine, the Let Me Tell You Something podcast, and this is something that I briefly touched on in our most recent episode entitled "Warning." And it's not always meant to be like super political like that, or like the one before was, where we talked about ICE and stuff. But I'm going to use all and any platforms that I can to make a difference and work to fight the good fight. And I encourage any and all of you to do the same. Um, Public sentiment is extremely important, including how we're seeing many celebrities and such coming out, speaking out against the current admin and things of that nature. All of that. It's so easy to write that off as just like liberal sentiment that doesn't actually move the needle, but it does. All of this stuff changes minds and changes hearts, and that is what we need to do ultimately to win. Anyway, leave a like if you like, and if not, I hope you find something you do like. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other out there, guys. Peace and love.